is Melly. Yeah. Yeah. And then I tried to do, right here in my cube. And then I tried to do Firefox, and it keeps trying to install some. I mean, I've tested this 10 times. Interesting. I mean, I've tested this. We tested it all day on Monday, and it worked. Oh. Okay, thanks. Bye.
So if you look for,
I'm so sorry.
Oh, no problem.
I just talked to my IT department, and they said Google makes updates all the time, and they just must have done something. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, no problem. It's okay.
Oh.
We start the video in a few moments.
Okay.
Oh, perfect. Oof.
I know.
It's okay. Não sei como faz para deixar foto.
Perfect. Hi, Emiliana. Hi, Emiliana. We are live on the YouTube Live, and that's your test, Emiliana. You'll definitely see the delay. Hi, Emiliana. We are live on the YouTube Live, and that's your test, Emiliana. You'll definitely see the delay. Hi, Emiliana. We are live on the YouTube Live, and that's your test, Emiliana. You'll definitely see the delay. Hi, Emiliana. Oh, I know why I haven't opened too many times.
Eu vou mandar aqui para cá, fechando. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. This is Cynthia.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me properly?
Yes, we can. This is Nellie and Gary.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Very nice to be here. It's been like a really pleasure to hear you talking about the trends in internal comms. Can you hear me properly?
Yes, we can. This is Nellie and Gary.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Very nice to be here.
Are you hearing that?
Being like a really sorry. We were just following the sound over here. So I will introduce myself in Portuguese and then in English, in order we can start having our conversation. So in English first, my name is Cynthia Provedel. I'm a teacher here for ABERJE MBA, and I'm graduated in communication from ESPM, and also I have a post-graduation in ECA USP, and also a master's from Casper Libero. And I've been working as a teacher over here for two years now. And I've been working with internal comms for more than 12 years. And currently I'm working at Sanofi as internal comms manager. And now em português, to be fair to everyone, meu nome é Cynthia Provedel, é um prazer estar aqui com todos vocês, espero que a gente tenha uma conversa bastante produtiva e proveitosa. Eu trabalho na área de comunicação interna há mais de 12 anos, atualmente eu sou gerente de comunicação interna na Sanofi, e sou professora aqui da casa há 2 anos, com a disciplina de comunicação interna. Sou formada em comunicação, com pós-graduação em comunicação pela USP e um mestrado em comunicação pela Casper Libero. So, now back in English. And I could maybe start with a question from my own, so we can warm up. Is it good?
Go ahead.
Okay, then. Gary, I was wondering, in your talk, you mentioned that change is constant. It's also like that for us over here. And when we speak about change, and we speak about changing environment, and also merge environment between companies, it can get to a little bit of crisis in internal communications if we don't really take care of it. My question is, from your experience, from everything that you have followed through in your career, how can we really ensure clarity and emotional involvement that you spoke so much about, and ensure trust on a changing environment, on an internal crisis environment?
Thank you for, first of all, thank you for that. And thank you for allowing us to be with you today. That's a great question. Really the only thing we can do as communicators to ensure clarity and to ensure that people are engaged emotionally with the business is we have to make sure that on any given day we understand where the business is. So we have to have a very strong comprehension of the business and the competitive reality and the consumer or customer reality. And every day we need to make sure that we are conveying that information to our employees and then allowing them to discuss it, debate it, wrap their heads around it so that they feel like they can make the argument themselves about what's happening. And really, in highly organized and what I would call highly engaged organizations, employees know every day what's going on in their business. You don't have to convince them of what's happening. You don't have to, there's no surprises as to what's happening because the organization is constantly communicating in a way that is very real and authentic about the business, both the opportunities and the challenges. So from a communication standpoint, where things tend to not get aligned, where people tend not to believe or trust, and therefore they really don't understand and change becomes very difficult for them. It's in organizations that don't do a good job in sticking to what the narrative is for the organization, and constantly talking about where the organization is, good and bad, on any given day. So that's really what we have to do as communicators. It's the consistency that's important.
Mhm. And another question that I would like to address, when we speak about driving content on our channels, on our town halls, and whatever, you told something that really makes me think. We should be talking also about what matters to employees, not only to what matters to us as organizations. From your experience, what usually really interests them? What are the top topics, hot topics that really interests them that we need to make sure that we address and that we have our focus on?
It's another very good question. The thing that I find that's pretty consistent, regardless of the company or the category or the industry that the company's involved with, whether it's an automotive company or a pharmaceutical company, or a healthcare company or a consumer company, employees really want one question answered, and that's always the why. So what they're interested in is why things are happening the way they are. They understand what's happening. They see what's happening. They really need to understand better why it's happening. What's taking place in the market or within the company for this to happen. So the why is a big part of it. Yes, they want to people, we all want to understand what it means to us. Are we going to have a job? Are we going to have a future? Is the company going to invest in the area that I'm working in? Is the company going to divest itself in that area, through a merger or acquisition, whatever the case is. But ultimately, what people are most interested in today is the why and the context of what you're doing in terms of decision making, product development, pricing, what your social purpose is as an organization, what your efficacy is as a business. Not enough time is usually spent inside an organization reinforcing the values and the vision and the reason why the company exists, and also why things are happening the way they are in the marketplace. And as communicators, I think some of the trends that you heard me talk about this morning really were about that. It was about recognizing, if you take 4 or 5 steps back, so what's really happening now in a social and digital reality? Well, what's happening is there's a new balance of power. Consumers and employees really control the dialogue because they have the means to do it, and so companies have to listen. Companies no longer own their brands or their products. The people that use them own it. The people that make them own it. And so you have to listen to the way they interpret what that product is or that brand is, and make sure you're evolving it consistently. You can't sell people anything today because we already understand that we're being sold. So people have to discover what's going on. So you have to actually engage in conversation, in dialogue. It's got to be a two-way street in terms of the way you exchange information. Employees realize there's not just one way to do something. So they want to make sure that they're exploring all the different angles and pathways that a company has to invest or to basically strategize around a given approach. So they just want to know all that. And so our job is to make sure that we're giving them the ability to do that. And we constantly have to be hearing, what people are interested in. And I think the way you get people interested in things, and I said it in the video that you looked at, was we have to become more provocative in how we talk to people internally. We have to be, because when you're provocative, if you say to somebody, we're a great team and we're going to win, in today's environment, nobody listens to that. But if you say to somebody, why are we losing? Right? And because you're in a company that your market share is going down, or your revenue is going down, or you're having quality issues, or you're having recalls, or you're losing talent. When you talk like that, people go, wow, they get it. Because I do think we're losing. So you connect with them on an emotional level and not just kind of on a factual level, right? And so we have to become more provocative and how we talk today, because that's what people want to hear. They know that there's tension in the world today, and they want to be able to be a part of that tension in a constructive way. And as communicators, we can basically help them do that by the stories we tell.
Excellent. Another question that we have over here, in order to really really address all the challenges that you are proposing and all the provocation that you are proposing, we should stop doing things that we are currently doing. And during your presentation, you said we should do less and do better. What should we stop doing? What we are doing that should be avoided? Are we investing in topics and in actions? What could be done differently on our activities in order to address what really matters?
Yeah.
The question is, what should we stop doing?
It's a great question. And I'll talk about this, but what we should stop doing is whatever's not working. Right. And that I can't tell you what's not working in every company. Right. So I can't make a general statement. What I can tell you is, if you're listening to your employees consistently, and if you're finding that people don't understand your strategy, or they're not emotionally engaged, or they're not as productive as they should be, or you're having a hard time retaining talent, or you're having a hard time recruiting talent, whatever you're currently doing then isn't working. So you have to take a step back and decide, are you in fact, are your communications actually driving the business, or is in fact, is it a barrier to the business, right? And I think I mentioned, not to this class or in this video, but one of my biggest experiences in this was when I was with General Motors several years ago, and we had a management newsletter that we were writing and developing, and we would send it out to over 100,000 managers to General Motors around the world, right? And we have been doing it for several years, and we had two people that were doing the newsletter. And what happened was, we had a situation where we had to take all of our communicators and we had to make sure that they were working on promoting our products. We were in a situation where we had to really move inventory. And so anything that we were doing that wasn't product related, we had to take people and put them on products, right? Which happens a lot in business. And it was only going to be for a short time. Well, the two people that were doing the management newsletter were the most vocal. They kept saying, this is a great newsletter. We win awards. Everybody loves it. You know, if we stop doing this, it's going to be a real problem for the firm. There are going to be trust issues and so on. And what I said to them at the time was, look, here's what we're going to do. We're going to stop doing the newsletter. If you get one email, think about this. We're sending it to over 100,000 people. If you get one email from somebody who says, where's my newsletter? We will rethink this situation and have you go back and do the newsletter. Well, 1 week went by, 2 weeks went by. You know what the story is. Nobody sent anything. Was it because it was a bad newsletter, or it didn't deserve to win awards? It was well researched. It was well written. No. What it said was that particular technique was no longer effective for that workforce. That was the message. So we were communicating to an audience that didn't exist, which is what I mentioned to you in the video. So every company has those stories where we get comfortable with the technique or the tactic, but we're not really paying attention anymore to whether it works. And so what we did is we stopped doing the newsletter, but we started doing other things, and we tested those things, and we found that there were other ways to get that kind of information to our managers, but just not in that format and not in that framework. So it wasn't like we stopped it entirely. We started to pay attention to how these managers were gathering information, and then we recalibrated what we did to better reflect that. So that's what I mean about stop doing things. And we all have those opportunities in terms of where we work. The question is, are we asking ourselves the right question?
Excellent, Gary. We have a question here from Marlene Marchiori. She's saying, congratulations for the webinar, Gary Grates. Can you comment about KPI? As you said in your presentation, that we do have new ways to measure it.
Yes, this is an important opportunity for us in communications. Because now we have analytics and data and insight, we now have the ability to really figure out what's happening, particularly with employees, right? And we have the ability now to take all that data and, as I said, process it and come up with insights that help us drive more precise communications, and then ultimately that would build engagement. So all that's terrific. The difficulty that we've had in communications, though, is we've always measured outputs or metrics, right? And that's important, but outputs and metrics only get you so far. So what's an output and a metric? We measure how many newsletters we produce. We measure how many videos we produce. We measure how many meetings we hold. We measure, how many brochures we develop. We measure the output of it. And that's a metric, and that's a very tactical thing. And it measures just communications. What we have to now understand is we have to move from outputs to outcomes. And outcomes are what the business determines value. So an outcome is a KPI. It's a key performance indicator. That's recruitment. Is what we're doing helping recruitment or hurting recruitment or not affecting recruitment? Is what we're doing helping retention, hurting retention, or not affecting retention? Is what we're doing increasing productivity, not touching productivity, making productivity worse? Whatever the case is what we're doing increasing our safety or our quality? Is it increasing our ability to succeed with a new product introduction? Whatever it is, we have to measure those things. So we have to move from outputs and metrics to outcomes and KPIs. And those have to be, quite frankly, you don't have to make those up. Those are the way your CEO and your leadership measures the business. So however they're measuring the business, then we have to kind of go in and overlay and say, okay, so what's our communications internally doing to support those KPIs? And if we can't find that, then we have to start from scratch and figure out if is what we're doing that, or do we have to do something different? So KPIs, I like to say KPIs keep us honest. Because if we can go back to leadership, right, with KPIs, then we're talking in their vocabulary and they're going to listen to us much better.
Speaking a little bit about leaderships, during your presentation, you mentioned the importance of the CEO figure. How do we deal on having the CEO agenda, which is really relevant and should be driven by topics such as strategy and business results and culture shift and so on. But we also have the agenda from the line managers. Both agendas should be really aligned. How do you see that? How can we deal in order not to overlap their agendas and to make sure that they are instead complementary?
Yes, it's a great question. So our role in communications is always evolving. We know that. That's what makes it interesting. Our role is to be a catalyst with the CEO to be able to say, this is your agenda based on your strategy and your directives and your priorities. That's fair. We have to be able to go in and say, let me explain to you why that will or will not work with this workforce. What do we need to, when you talk about this, what are people really hearing, right? So we have to go in and basically be that catalyst that allows a leadership team to understand how to convey that and communicate that in a way that actually engages people, right? And so we have to come to the table with a knowledge of our workforce, who's working for us, what do they think about, what do they believe in, who do they trust, what do they hear when you're talking? When you talk about the business, what are they actually hearing? And a lot of companies don't do that. It's very one-directional, right? And I think in the video, I showed you an example of a discover versus sell model in implementing strategy. And I thought that hopefully lays it out very clearly. In a sell model, you're basically just telling people, what you want to tell them. In a discover model, you're allowing them to be part of that discussion, right? And there's a different set of techniques. Now, your second point, in addition to being a catalyst, we have to be an aggregator. We have to go to the line managers and make sure that their interpretation of what the business needs to do is in effect aligned and calibrated with what they're doing. So it's a constant. I always call it a Rubik's Cube, you know, where you have to kind of make the shapes all line up. We're constantly making sure that we're lining up all these shapes because communications is a very delicate process. And sometimes, as we all know, a stray word or a misinterpretation of a priority can basically move people off of what needs to be done. So we have to be diligent and constantly recognizing that we're always kind of reshaping that so that all the pieces fit together. But we have a dual role there. It's not just to take what the leaders want, it's to help shape it in a manner that the workforce can understand, and then work with the line managers to ensure that what they're doing on a day-to-day basis is in effect adding up to what the business needs to accomplish.
Perfect. During your presentation, you spoke a little bit about the levels of engagement or the psychological characteristics from employees, and that we are challenged to pay attention to that in order to segment our communications. And you spoke especially about the denigrator. And my question is, from a communications perspective, can or should we rescue them?
I've never heard it put that way. That's excellent. I love that. I'm going to use that. I love that. Thank you. No, we can't. That's the whole point of that exercise. When I went through the archetypes, what I was trying to say to you is that the bottom two, you have to ignore those folks. You're never going to rehabilitate them. And most communications internally tries to be vanilla. It tries to talk to everybody. Well, the reality is that you're wasting a lot of effort, because when you talk to everybody, you talk to nobody, right? So the only people you should be worrying about are the people who have that ability, who have a very strong and loyal affection for the company, but they may not be motivated right now for a number of reasons. Maybe things happen in the organization and they're maybe distraught about that. Maybe they have a bad manager or supervisor, but they still love the organization. They love the brand. Those folks still want to be challenged. And so that's a question. So how do we do that? We have to talk to them in a way that keeps them smart, right? That keeps them engaged in terms of what's happening. This is my point earlier about the why. Because the more we do that, the more we're speaking to them. And then obviously we got to go after the catalysts, right? The people that every day come in and they want to change the world. Because those are the folks that if you don't engage them early on, they will leave quickly, right? Because they have other options. Catalysts always have other options. So you need a mix of those folks who are constantly challenging the status quo. And that's why I think being provocative in a lot of our messaging, you're speaking to those two levels, because that's the way they think. They don't believe that everything is perfect every day, because it's not. We know that. What they think about is, how do I make it better? And that's critically important. So I think you're absolutely correct. We're not gonna save them. We're not, in fact, we hope that over time they leave, but that's not our responsibility. That's more HR, right? So from a communication standpoint, we want to go after those top two bands.
Great. When we speak about internal comms, we sure have the strategic comms aspects, and we have the line manager comms. We have so many challenges to address. But I was wondering if we also should pay attention and monitor the kind of communication which is not official. I mean the peer-to-peer communications, the way people communicate between each other, which is really organic, and which is the one throughout the feelings and the emotional aspects go through. So I was wondering, is it really important for us to keep our attention into this kind of communication as well, the one that goes through peer-to-peer and also goes around the whole organization?
Yes, I mean, the reality is, you really can't, nor should you try to infiltrate that. That's because that's organic, that's natural. That's people that have, they can talk to each other at a certain level, they can confide in each other, they can challenge each other, they can commiserate with each other if they feel that the company's not doing the right things. All that stuff that's a natural thing that happens. But what we can do, quite frankly, is we can understand what they're talking about. That's what I was saying earlier about we say one thing and then they hear another, right? We can understand what they're doing. There's no question about it. But we need to make sure that by virtue of listening to those conversations, that those are being incorporated into what we're doing. That was my point about being provocative and being real in terms of how we communicate. So yes, we have to pay attention to that. We have to listen to that. But it's more so for us to figure out what really is breaking through than as opposed to we have to somehow be involved in that. We should never be involved in that. That's just the way the company operates. That, that's just the dynamic of the organization. But if we're not listening to that, that's where trouble starts.
Totally agreed. I think we have a couple of more questions. One of them is, what is in your opinion the key aspect to ensure segmented comms, communications directly to a specific audience?
Yeah, I think, well, again, this comes down to you have to have the tools and the technology internally to segment your audience. And this is a frustration that I see a lot of in a lot of organizations. If I say to them, look, if we want to talk, I'm making this up, but let's say we're talking to an automotive company, okay? And I say, how can I just want to talk to all the engineers in this company. What I'm usually told is, well, we can't do that, right? We don't have the right distribution lists. We don't have the right. So basically, you're going to have to talk to, everybody, every engineer in every brand by brand, or you're going to have to talk to every employee, or you're going to have to talk to all salaried employees. We have to now get much better from a technology standpoint, and to your point, segmenting those audiences. An organization can segment its audiences 1,000 different ways, just like we segment customers, right? We just haven't done that well with the workforce, but we need to do that, because ultimately, as we evolve as a profession and as we evolve as a society, we're going to have to communicate in that way. We're going to have to be very, very specific about how that looks and how that works. But I'm not sure a lot of organizations are built that way yet.
Just 1 minute.
Yeah.
When it comes to crisis communication as well, have you ever had any kind of experience that you couldn't at all say what was going on, but you need to keep people confidence in order to have them engaged afterwards, when everything could be clear and everything could be told? Have you ever had this kind of experience? Yeah. And how did you deal with that?
Well, because the first point is, even if you can't say a lot because it's still under investigation, or it could be, it's either a legal thing or regulatory or whatever, and there are specific, laws against, even in those cases, you can still communicate. It doesn't give you a license not to communicate. What you can say is, what people need to know is there's a process that the company is undergoing that has these types of protocols that allow you to say or not say certain things. But you have to be able to tell somebody what people are looking for in a crisis is they're looking for somebody in control. That's it. So there are opportunities, even if you can't give the details because they're being investigated, or, there could be there's a lot of legal, in crisis, legal comes into play, and the lawyers don't want to talk to anybody, right? You always have to temper legal with logic. So there are things you can say. You may not be able to say them in the detail that everybody wants, but people will appreciate the fact that there are protocols or laws or regulations that prevent you. But not saying anything is the worst thing that can happen, because then people don't think anybody's in control, and the trust in the organization goes way down. So it's a question of balance, it's a question of frequency, and it's a question of obviously just being conscious of the fact that while you can't give out certain things, you can allow people to know that a process is in place, and that at certain posts in that process, you're going to be able to say a little bit more. So you manage expectations through it, and then when you get to a final point, you've actually helped people kind of assimilate what's going on over a period of time, and you keep your trust intact. And that's really all you're trying to accomplish.
I think we have a question over here that really matches your last answer. Considering all those challenges that we have daily in internal comms practice, what thoughts you could share with us regarding crisis communication from the internal audience perspective? Could you add some comments related on it?
Yeah. First of all, in any kind of a crisis situation, and it's important. There's a couple things I want to say first. The reason why I structured the video to talk about trends and insights in organizational communications was before you can even talk about crisis, you have to first have a foundation to understand where the profession is moving. So what I try to do in the video is give you a foundation for understanding the tools, the techniques, the insights, and the trends that are facing us as organizational or internal communications. Now, when you get to a crisis situation, a key element is internal communications people have to be in the middle of whatever crisis process is in place. So whatever the company's dealing with, you, as well as your media and your external communications people, have to be part of that inner circle, because you both have very important constituencies. On the one hand, you're trying to protect your relevance and your reputation externally, right? You have to meet with the media, customers, regulatory bodies, suppliers, communities, whatever it is. And then internally, you've got to deal with your workforce, which is the most important thing. So both types of experience and expertise needs to be within that crisis management team. That's number one. Number two, you obviously have to be able to make sure that the external message and the internal message are one. You can't say one thing to one group and another to another group. The only thing that's different is that inside the organization, you are allowed to provide a bit more context as to why things are happening, albeit, again, recognizing that there might be some legal or regulatory or other tenets that you have to be cognizant of. But the point of the matter is, in a crisis situation, internal communications is critically important to maintaining the company's reputation and relevance, because the external world will call or connect with the internal world to say, what in the heck is going on? And if the employee says, I don't know, they're hiding stuff from me or they're not telling me, that only exacerbates, the negative part of this. If somebody contacts them and they say, look, all I know is we're investigating it, there's a process in place. Obviously, they can't tell us a lot, but they're keeping us informed of what's going on. But they're very confident in what they're doing and how they're going to do it. And they're making all the right statements about, we're never going to have this. We're going to find out what happened and we're going to fix it. It's never going to happen again. Depending upon what the crisis is, we're going to make sure that, safety or quality or whatever the issue is, you're going to reiterate that that's a big part of your mission and your values. Those kinds of things are important because externally people are going to test the way in which the company is addressing it internally, right? And that's critically important. And if you don't do that with your internal audience, you're actually giving the external world an opportunity to distrust you over the long haul.
Excellent, Gary. How do you define employee communications currently, nowadays? Do you define it as a process? Can you comment on that, please?
Yeah, I honestly believe internal communications and leadership are one. I think that internal communications, it's not a process or a system, it's a philosophy. It's based on what I said to you in the video, which is the premise is, how smart do you want people to be, right? And who do you want to believe in our story? That's what it is. Internal communications, the whole goal of it, the objective of it, isn't to develop stuff or to produce stuff. The whole goal of it is to make sure people are confident and believe in the future of the organization, right? So that when they come to work every day, they feel like they understand, they have all the right training and expectations, they have the right priorities, they're being compensated and they're being rewarded and recognized for the right behaviors. And that all you're trying to do with communications in that context is you're trying to initiate conversation, right? So the goal or objective of organizational communications is to generate dialogue, discussion, or debate. That's it. Because if somebody wants to talk about something or they want to debate it, that means they care. It's not to generate awareness. That was the sell model that I kind of showed you on the video. That's the old model, right? Just tell people and we're going to convey it. We're going to promote it. Who cares? You don't even know if people heard you, right? That's gone. What you need to do now is you got to meet people somewhere in the middle so that both parties have an ability to respect each other's opinions and respect each other's arguments, but still then work together in a manner that helps both parties. You as the individual employee and the company as the enterprise.
Excellent. How can we balance content and context? This is really critical in communications to employees. Is it possible to establish a balance between addressing content and context?
Yes, absolutely. Because look, content today, you can get content anywhere. If I want to look at, if I want to see what any of my clients are doing right now, or if I worked for a company and I wanted to see what that company was doing right now, all I would have to do is go on my smartphone and download, whatever that company's name is, and I could find out its stock price, if it's got a recall, whatever it is, whatever's happening, I can find that out instantaneously. What I don't know, again, is the why it happened, right? So internally, that's what you own. You own the context. You own the why, if you will. So as an internal communicator, your job is, and again, make people aware of stuff. They're aware of it because that's the way information is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. What they can't get from anybody else is the why. So you have to, as a communicator, make sure that you're digging and probing and understanding what the cause of these things are. And then you're talking about it in a way that allows people to understand it, assimilate it, and hopefully, use it as part of the way they work. So yes, the balance, the difficulty is when I go into clients or organizations is that they're just doing more content. Well, that's not relevant. More content is not relevant. The only thing that's relevant is what are the key priorities of the business, and then tell me why those are taking place the way they are. Why aren't we selling more products? Why are we being marginalized? Why is Google all of a sudden a competitor? Right? 3 years ago, if you went to an automotive company, not one of them would have ever said Google would be a competitor. And now Google is a competitor. If you went to a retail company 10 years ago and said Amazon was going to be your #1 competitor, not one retail company would have ever said, you're right, and I better be able to strategize against them. Right? That's the world we live in. So disruption, because of technology, is what's happening. And people need to understand why. Right? And if they don't understand why, they distrust you. And when they distrust you, they get angry. And when they get angry, they either don't work or they leave. Right? I'm not going to make this a political statement because that's not my point. But if you see what's happening around the world from a political standpoint, what do people around the world, what are they asking their governments about today? Why are things the way they are? I know what they are. I know what's happening. Tell me why. Why couldn't we prevent them, and why can't we fix them? And that's really that's the key thing of our time right now, is our ability, whether a politician, a teacher, a CEO, a communicator, whatever we are in life, a parent, we have to be able to answer those questions. So I think the balance of content and content is crucial, and yes, it's definitely something that's manageable.
Talking about crucial, you spoke previously that purpose creates emotional engagement, right? And sometimes organizations create purpose and visions that not necessarily reflects the company as it is, but it reflects the company as the company wants to be. Is it okay to create a purpose such as like I told you, or should we create purpose that matches perfectly as it is in order not to lose credibility?
I don't think there's, look, it's a great question. Here's my answer to that. Here's my opinion. You can have, obviously, you all have your own opinions, and we respect each other's opinions, but I'll give you my opinion. companies today are using purpose as a means to help them get better as an organization. So companies are trying to figure out what the next opportunity is to become a better citizen of the world, hopefully to become a better employer, to help solve social issues, to look at what they do in their products and in their investments that make them a place where people want to work because they're actually bettering something bigger than they are. So if you have a purpose that is bigger than or different from what you currently are, there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you're showing or helping people figure out how you're going to get there. If you just say, hey, we want to be this, and we're still doing this year after year, well, then that's not a purpose. That's basically a fallacy. You know, that's not even a vision, right? That's just you're basically, it's rhetoric, because then people go, yeah, they say this, but every year we do the same things. If you have a vision or a purpose and you say, look, and over the next 5 or 10 years, this is how we're going to get there. We're going to reduce CO2 emissions. We're going to take salt out of our potato chips. We're going to take sugar out of our. So I'm making this up, but my point is, whatever we're going to do to get better, then there's a trajectory to do that, right, over time. But you have to be able to communicate what that trajectory is. If you don't do that, then people aren't going to listen to you. They're not going to believe you, and you're actually going to hurt yourself from a trust standpoint. So I'm a firm believer in having your purpose be something that you aspire to, as long as a business, you're basically managing to get there, and as a communications function, you're helping to convey that story and helping people understand when you do succeed at something, or if in fact you fail at something, equally talk about what you learned from that failure.
Thank you for your excellent answer. I believe this was our last question. And if you are comfortable with that, I would like you to give a final message to our audience when it comes to internal comms overall challenges on the current times.
Oh, great. First of all, thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity to be with you today. I hope you found the video and the discussion helpful. I would say to you this: internal communications probably today is in my opinion, the most important element of an organization's ability to be successful, and that's because if you can't maintain a workforce that is engaged in, again, the efficacy and the vision of your company, then you can't succeed, no matter how great your products are, no matter how great your strategy is. If you don't have people to buy into it and actually operate against it in a sustainable manner, right, in a consistent manner, then you can't win. And so there's a big competition today for talent, and talent is based on your ability to attract and retain people that actually can help you grow over time, can help you think through all the challenges that a business has. And communications is critical to that, because communications gives people a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose. It helps in becoming trustful, and it helps in people feeling comfortable to engage at a level that makes them feel like they're being productive in the world. So from an organizational or internal communication standpoint, the work that we do is in fact critically important to the business long term. And so I hope that you take that seriously. I think there's a tremendous amount of experimentation that we can now have because of technology and the different ways that we can approach things, the use of data and analytics, using those insights to help, gauge communications in a more precise fashion, understanding our workforce in a deeper way. All these things are now available to us, which makes our job, it's a little bit more difficult, but it's a heck of a lot more beneficial in the long run. So I wish you the best in what you're doing, and hopefully I'll get to ABERJE fairly soon. I can see everybody in person.
Thank you very much, Gary. It was very nice meeting you. It was very productive to have this conversation, very insightful. I'm very grateful for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Obrigada, pessoal, pela participação de todo mundo. As perguntas adicionais que porventura vocês tiverem, podem ser endereçadas para a ABERJE e vão, com certeza, ser respondidas pelo Gary. Obrigada pela participação, muito obrigada pelas perguntas e pela oportunidade. Um ótimo dia para todo mundo. Obrigada. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Nelson. How long do we go now?
Thank you, Neil.
Hi, Emiliana. Great job.
Great job. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.